most of you know, I'm from Canada. I was born and raised in Montreal, Canada, which is actually part of Quebec, which is bilingual. So I was basically born into two cultures, two languages, English and French. I went to, what's going on? I went to Hebrew Academy, which was which is still a Jewish Orthodox private school in Montreal. Very Zionistic, very love for Israel. I think the first song that they taught us was Yisrael Sheli Yafa Vegam Porachat, and how everything is the land of milk and honey. I was obviously part of Bnei Akiva, which was Torah Ve'Avodah. Shevet Tzvi, if anybody knows. And after high school, one of the most important things was to do a year in Israel. I couldn't find the picture of the school, so it's the picture of the street. It was Rehov HaTurim in Jerusalem. And it was a Machon Gold seminary. It was a year that really felt that it connected everything that we were. It was living in Israel for a year, learning about the land, seeing the land, and everything together. Very spiritual thing. It really marked me. And it was one of the first times that I was only 17, and I said to my parents, I want to stay here. I want to go to the army. And they said, no, you're 17, you're coming home. So I did. And I went to university, Concordia University, where I did my undergrad. And while I was doing my undergrad, almost every summer, I would volunteer for the Federation CJ and volunteer in Israel, do all kinds of volunteering programs in Israel. And then when school was over and we had to decide going to grad school, when I was supposed to go to law school, there was a feeling of let's take some time off. A few of us were discussing, let's take a year off. Some people were getting married already. Some people were saying like, let's do something a little different. And a bunch of us were like, we're going to go to Israel. So we decided we're going to go for Israel for a year. And the year is now 21 years. Here I am. So these are some of the places I came to Israel. I was supposed to come for Israel for a year, and then I got this amazing job at the United Israel Appeal at the Jewish Agency. I was working there for the UIA of Canada, which seemed, like what's the expression? A glove fits a glove to the hand, or something like that. You got it. It just was a great fit. And then my journey just continued. It was just natural for me to stay here, and I was able to work at some pretty prominent global companies in Israel, such as Strauss Group, to pharmaceuticals. During those years, I decided that it was wonderful working in such amazing places, but maybe I should think about going back to law school. So I had to gather up the courage, because my Hebrew was, like every, person, we all had a basic Hebrew. We learned Torah and Jewish studies, but to go and to actually learn to study law school and write and learn, it seemed very difficult, but I did it. So I went to Kiryat Ono and I got my law degree. And then I did the bar exam and I became a lawyer. So I had some experience. Oops, hold on. Before that, I had some experience working in a lot of corporate law, banking law, family law. And then I had to figure out where it is that I wanted to actually zero in on. And within that whole journey, I want to introduce you to my husband, Inon, and my son, my 5-year-old son, Oriel Chaim. And this was a picture we just took on Friday, and I just thought I'd share it with you. Right before Shabbat, we were sending it to my family in Canada. So although I'm all alone here in Canada, and I did this whole journey alone because no one wanted to follow me, and everyone stayed in Canada, my brothers and sisters and my parents, and this is my family here in Israel, and I'm very proud. So let's talk about law. So I always wanted to become a lawyer, but I think that the journey took me away. The fact that I had this gut feeling that I wanted to come and live in Israel, or just, you know, even if it was just for a year, I knew that I did want to become a lawyer, and I, like I explained, I did go to law school. And I did do it. I felt that a lot of the experience in Israel, it's not what it is today. Today, I find that there's a lot of WhatsApp groups that are very supportive, things online. There's a lot of information. There's a lot more people making Aliyah, that people, you know, like this whole group. Think about you guys. I mean, we have professionals here that we could turn to, and I think that the access was much less 20 years ago, and which is a really good thing. And the bureaucracies, I think the bureaucracy is still very difficult in Israel, but it's it was a difficult thing, and it was something that I had marked about Israel, and I said to myself, maybe one day I could become the support system that I didn't have for others. What happened was that so I became a lawyer, and I wanted to know, I was working in a corporations, I was doing corporate law, I did a bit of family law, and I was doing real estate. And then I realized that out of everything, I think that the real estate had a mission for me. And I'll explain, because everything else it was wonderful. It was, you know, very professional, doing banking loans and banking law and corporate and big projects and big things. But in the end, NDAs and distribution agreements and all that thing became a little bit mundane, I would say. And there was something about the real estate that was very attractive. And why is that? Because I realized that real estate may be a really good, you know, niche to be in, but for people abroad, it was actually them securing their future in Israel. And that's my hashtag today. It's secure your future in Israel today. I think I was the first one who made it up. I may have not. So I started zeroing in on real estate law, and it started with family and friends who were interested in investing and purchasing land and having a piece of land in Israel, which was possibly like the ultimate dream for people abroad who wouldn't be able to make Aliyah, but were probably with, you know, having some kind of foot in Israel. And then I found that I was a legal simultaneous translator, I called it, and I'll just explain what that means. That meant that I would come to a contract, and then you would have one party that was Francophone, speaking French, another party that was English, and usually the lawyers were speaking Hebrew. And I would have to literally read a clause in Hebrew, translate it to French, translate it to English, questions, answers, everything. And it was just very, it's intense. But then I realized that it's a mission, because the fact that I have English and French as a maternal language, then it was actually, I was able to give that service beyond giving legal. I was able to actually it'd be a bridge to the gap. And it could have been between the Anglophone to the Francophone to the, you know, and with the lawyer, but it was just everything together, and it just came together. And I was just like, okay, because it wasn't just a literal translation, it was also explaining how things work here in Israel, how the Anglophones explains, how the French explains, that the nuances, the language, the speaking, everything. And one of the things that I really liked is that I was just saying, yesterday I had a transaction that we were signing on a property transaction, and we had a l'chaim, and I just wanted to mention it here because that was one of the things that's so exciting. It became like I was part of every time I was part of a signing, it was a l'chaim, taking out the whiskey, the arak, and it was a big simcha. And it's very nice to be part of it. It is a very, like I said, it's for a lot of people, it's the ultimate dream. Also for Israelis, buying a home is a big achievement. And for people abroad, it's actually and even bigger. It's an even more meaningful thing. So again, secure your future in Israel today. So a little bit about real estate. So what is it that you do? So you buy, it could be buying, representing a buyer, a seller of properties. It could be buying a pre-construction, like from a kablan. It could be a private purchase or selling between two individuals. We're talking about rental agreements, gifting between maybe a parent will gift his property to his child, or other different formats or structures. It can be inheritance. Someone inherits an apartment, a land, etc. There's tax structures depending on how many apartments you have. What is it? Are you a foreign buyer? Are you an Ole Chadash? Are you a first-time buyer? Are you an investor? There's all kinds of different aspects to include when you're looking into real estate. Some have financial aspects to it and implications. So just to get back a little bit to, like, you know, it's not just, but it is. So when you have a contract, as a lawyer, the responsibility is that, you know, a client will call you up and say, hey, I found the property of my dream and I would like to purchase it. Here are the details. So what's important to do is to actually say, okay, before anything, I'd like to do some kind of due diligence on the property and the ownership, meaning see if there's any debts on the property. It could be a credit, a mortgage, it could be something else. If the ownership is actually in the right name, and things like that. And then you have the actual drafting of the contract, making sure you have the responsibilities of the sellers and the buyers' responsibilities and rights. Everything should be in order. Then you have the negotiations. The negotiations not only just with the other lawyers, with the other party's lawyer, but it's also to understand what the client needs. Does he need a mortgage? Does he need it early? Like, does he need it to be a quick transaction? Does it need it to be a long? Is it a back-to-back transactions? All these issues that are important to implicate and to understand them, and to, you know, they should be in the contract. As I said, the signing, I always have the jitters. It doesn't matter how many years I've been in, it's about 10 years that I've been doing contracts. You always have a little bit of the jitters. You know, is everything in order? Or, you know, was everything done properly? That I didn't leave anything out? There's no loopholes. And it doesn't end at the signing, because here in Israel, it is the responsibility of the lawyers to actually report to the real estate tax and do the right reporting and to do it properly. And then we follow you through until the property is actually registered in your name. Mazal tov. Now that could be for anyone, it's not necessarily, but when dealing with a foreign clients and Israeli, Anglo and Franco community, there's extra things that there is. It's actually the support system that I was talking about. It's not only what we discussed about due diligence and things. There's a responsibility beyond. At least I feel that way, because they don't speak the language, and that's why they're coming to you. They need someone not only they don't just want a lawyer that they could trust. Not only, they need also someone that they could understand, but not only understand that said, you know, shalom, shalom, but really understand their representation, understand everything that there is. And when there's a foreign client or an Ole Chadash, there's always different, not always, but there's different tax implications than an Israeli. There are financial solutions that you may need to find for them, whether it's transferring the money, bank accounts, mortgages, credits necessary, etc. You will need notary and consular services, and you need to know how and which documents need to be apostille, notarized, etc. Sometimes you also need to do translations, depending again on the specific transaction, translations to English, to French. Sometimes you need other languages, but those are languages I do. And you really need to be their eyes and their ears here. Because again, they trust you. And I want that. I want them to trust me. I take that responsibility very seriously. And it's important to have that with any lawyer, but especially when you're far away and you're abroad, and the process of purchasing real estate is very, very different. The laws are different. Everything's different than abroad. Just want to tell you a little story about a client. So this, we'll call them E and D. Unfortunately, D passed away a few years ago. But E and D came to me when they were foreign buyers and they wanted to buy a big apartment so that they could come and be on vacation, and have their family come over, and it could just be like a family vacation home. Well, since that first apartment, we have bought and sold 4 homes together. But what the story is actually that big home that they had first bought, the kids ended up, after a few years, the kids ended up making Aliyah as well. So they didn't need such a big home. They could have a more compact home and that it could be closer to a city. And when they came to live in the city, what they wanted was just a nice, comfortable sea view apartment. Well, they moved into that apartment. We sold the previous, we bought this one. And I say we because I really felt part of it. And they were very happy. And then what happens is that D gets sick, she has a stroke, and she needs to be closer to the city and to the Kupat Cholim, and just to be closer to different areas of the city and stuff. And so they sold and we bought a place closer to. And then the situation got worse. And then she needed a home that would be accessible, and she was in a wheelchair. And then again, we sold and we bought. And this week we sold the last home. Unfortunately, Dee passed away, and in the last 2 years. And what I want to share is that E couldn't no longer live. He no longer wanted to live in this house because it reminded him of D. But what I found when I came to have him sign the contract this time was that usually in all the transactions, E was the one running and getting all the papers that needed to get, all the ishurim that needed, everything that I needed, he would be running and getting for me. And this time I had to do everything because he has regressed. He no longer wants to do anything, live. Unfortunately, it was very hard for him to actually sign, and I had to sit there, and I think it took me over an hour to sit there and have him sign the contract. And I just wanted to say that it becomes sometimes a client, not only is he loyal to you, you're loyal to him. And I feel like throughout these transactions and this whole assisting of this whole thing, it became personal, and it became like they could trust me and I want to be there for them. And it's just important to have this relationship. So that's just one story of the type of clients and the type of service that is given, and a relationship that is created between clients and lawyers sometimes. The other story is 3 siblings who live abroad and inherited in Israel. They inherited a little building, and they decided to turn it into a beautiful 30-unit project. And why that's exciting is because I had taken care of their inheritance registration. They inherited, to be passed over to their names. And then a few months later, they called and said, what could we do? We want to do something with this. What should we do with it? And then it became into this really big banking loans, contractor contracts, and it became into this really, really big real estate project that I'm following them through, and I'm really excited to see this beautiful project come about. So that's my story. Thank you, merci, toda. Please secure your future in Israel. This is me. Thank you very much for listening.
Very nice, lovely.
Fantastic, that was great. A huge round of applause for Sandrine firstly, that was brilliant. Does anyone have any questions for Sandrine? Any questions? Okay, thank you so much, Sandrine. That was absolutely fantastic. Really, really great. I'm now going to put you into breakout rooms once again. So you'll have about 15 minutes, 10 minutes here. I'll bring you out about 11:15.